there's a lot to know about sales. There's a lot to know about closing. It's not a simple matter of just going out there and selling. Although people learn that way, you're never going to be as sharp as you would have been if you did a little bit, a little bit of self-education on the psychology, the closing techniques, and the overall thing that you're doing. And we don't often take the time to go through this stuff sort of from that perspective. But so I want to give you just a practical, nuts and bolts, no frills, no filler presentation about what I know about sales, having done a lot of it, and go through the stuff that helped me. So when I made this presentation, and this is a compilation, I've given this presentation, believe it or not, 10 years ago for the first time in part, but I added to it and I put some stuff into it and I changed some things about it that I thought would be really relevant to all of you because, this is a different, the market's changing, right? This is not a niche vertical that we're engaged in. It's a way of life. Even 10 years ago, the internet was huge, and I'm not pretending it wasn't, but what we were doing here and who we were servicing and what was going on was not as broadly applicable. And I think because of that, the training back then wasn't as broadly applicable. It focused on a lot of technical minutia that just doesn't exist anymore to cause the process to bog down. So now selling websites is very much more analogous to selling any other service to somebody than it was back then, where it was a very technical procedure. So in any event, I'm going to go through this from beginning to end. We're going to start with a few things before we begin about sales. When we're talking about sales, the first thing you need to know about it is that it is an analog process. We live in digital times. And I almost think that because we live in digital times, people's mentality today is becoming more like our great-grandparents that are in the beyond right now. People are looking at things and they're reverting from being critical thinkers who figure out problems themselves to being people who want to be spoon-fed pieces and bits of information but never study a topic in totality, where they don't need to be fed information. They can figure out things themselves. It's like the difference between somebody, wanting a manual for some product or somebody wanting to just know how to turn it on and they'll figure it out themselves through experimentation, right? There's these two sort of ways. People are becoming much more dependent, addicted, dependent, whatever you want to call it, on both search technology and upon information. And when you approach sales, you cannot approach it with this mentality. There is absolutely no way that I can give you a menu options or a list of things to follow that are going to result in you coming out the other end an amazing salesperson. Only you can grasp the big points that I make and apply them yourself and figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Because I'm going to go through closing techniques here, okay? And closing techniques here, they're all over the place. There's lots of different ones. What really matters is not that you understand every single closing technique. It's not that you understand every single closing technique, but that you grasp the bigger picture point that these closing techniques are going to be applied by you out there in reality. And you have to figure out what works for you. What is going to work the best for any of you, right? And you have to refine this. It's a practice makes perfect type of a thing where you have to go through and you have to really just flop a lot, right? Go out there and sell, have a bad demo, a good demo, bad presentation, good presentation, learn what works, learn about people. Sales is always about people, right? It's always about, and human beings are the most widely varied creatures in all existence, right? When you're talking about people and you're talking about selling them something and your interaction with them, it's the chemistry, it's the interplay, it's learning about what makes people work, different types of personalities, different types of people. Some people will respond great to one close and they'll respond horribly to another. You have to figure this out on your own. And one of the worst things is people will approach it robotically. And, that I've seen so many times. I've trained salespeople, I've educated them, and then they go out and they approach sales like a 1950s cigarette salesman. Hello, my name is so-and-so. I'd like to sell you such and such. Would you like to buy such and such from so-and-so? You know, like that, like a robot. A lot of people are like that. When you get telemarketing calls, you know what it's like. You get somebody who calls you up. Hello, sir, ma'am. Would you like to buy blah, blah, blah? It's very necessary because of blah, blah, blah. You are never going to buy from that person. Now, if they'd called and they'd been a human to you, you might have bought, right? You might have actually invested your time in listening to them, first of all, especially if they entertained you, if they made you laugh, if they brightened up your day in a very small way. Think about sales that way. It's just, you know, I used to tell people, especially when I had young people, and I'm a young person myself, at least to a degree, you know, I'm in my 30s, right? When I had younger people that I would train, I would tell them, you know how you'd con your parents out of, you know, money or something, right? If you were complaining to them, you're bothering them, you're manipulating them. I said, that's a manipulation, you know, your manipulation ability, right? And that's what you have to use on another person to get to do good at closing and do good at sales, right? You're going to manipulate them. You're going to use the same skill set in your head on other people that you were using on your parents when you were growing up. So think of it that way. Not saying to do that, but think of it that way. That's the way that you approach it. So never be fake, you know, and always have fun with it. You know, I had so much fun. The best time in my life, believe it or not, was when I was doing outside sales. It was amazing. You know, I used to go out and I had to build marketing teams. I had to knock doors. I had to sell people. I went into every type of household you can imagine. They run the gamut, selling various home improvement products and equipment. And mostly it was all water equipment, water stuff. And doing that was, you know, just incredible. It was a lot of fun. I did very well at it. And it was something that I learned a lot from when it comes to sales. I know what sales was about because I worked at that one call close, really brutal level. And it is sort of brutal in the sense that you have to really, really apply yourself to get that to happen. Anyway, this is just a few tips I want to throw in before we sort of begin. We're going to begin with the 80-20 rule. And this is something I think everybody needs to be familiarized with. And probably, I'm going to guess at least half of the people on this call, if not way more, are familiar with it already. And you understand it. It's called the Pareto Principle, okay? There was a guy, Vilfredo Pareto. He was from Italy, I believe, and it was in the 1890s. He figured out this principle, and it was that 80% of the wealth was concentrated in 20% of the households, the people. Then he started looking at other things and found out this is kind of a general principle. 80% of sales came from 20% of clients. 80% of salespeople made 20% of salespeople made 80% of sales. 80% of effort or 20% of effort gave you 80% of knowledge, and so on and so forth. And he actually kind of disseminated or was responsible. I don't know if he was responsible, but people were responsible for disseminating out the idea that this was a general rule. And it's something that business really, really, really picked up on because they saw the truth in it. Okay. And I promise you, you can try to debunk this one all you want. You may be able to debunk ghouls and ghosts, but you are not debunking the 80-20 principle. Okay. The idea that 80% of your sales will come from 20% of clients in terms of money and stuff. And 20% of salespeople will always make 80% of sales. It's just the way the distribution works. So with that in mind, when you approach closing techniques, because that's what this presentation is going to be about, closing techniques, 80% of your sales will come from both 20% of the effort and 20% of these techniques. Okay, I'm going to go through a whole bunch of them. There are literally thousands. I had to pick which ones to go through. You know, I couldn't go through them all. It would be impossible. All right, there are literally thousands of variations upon them. So I chose relatively fundamental principles that you can then cue off of and modify. And then, of course, once you modify them, it's considered this close or that close. But they're all based on just a handful of fundamental closing techniques. But keep this in mind. This applies, you know, directly to all of you because basically you're all involved in, I know you're consultants. Don't get me wrong. I'm a firm believer in consultative selling, but you are still salespeople. And this applies to the sales side of things. That when you go out there and you're starting to apply yourself, you're starting to, you know, engage and deal with people, that, you know, you look at it from the perspective, knowing in the back of your head about the 80-20 rule, knowing in the back of your head, that this is an analog process. Don't be fake. I'm just setting the stage for you guys. I want to make sure when we go through this presentation, everyone is on the same page and understands. These are fundamental truisms and things that I really, really think will apply and help all of you. Now, this is the first type of closing technique, okay? This is called the Assumptive Close. This is the basis for literally hundreds, maybe even thousands of different variations of closing technique, okay, based upon this. The Assumptive Close is extremely popular and it's extremely simple. There's all kinds. There's the cop-out close. There's just all kinds of closes based upon the Assumptive Close. And the Assumptive Close works really simply. And this little screen in front of you, this little graphic, illustrates it and lines it up. It's really, you have a presentation, you sit down with somebody, you walk them through buying this product, and instead of ever asking them, hey, do you want to buy? You don't ask them, do you want to buy? You pull out the contract and you ask them how many they want. Buying is assumed, okay? It's assumed they're going to buy. That's what makes it an Assumptive Close. Now, onto this close, you can have all kinds of wild variations. There are, just so many. There are variations of this technique that go into, all kinds of different directions. You could take the Assumptive Close and you can assume how many they're going to buy. You can assume based on features. You can push the assumptive component of the close way to the end or pull it further back in your closing process, right? You can start with your Assumptive Close and then include part of your pitch after that in your presentation. There's all kinds of ways that you can take this and you make it your own. And that's what you need to do. Look at this technique and think of it from that perspective. And I'll read this on the screen here. Some examples would be, when shall we deliver it to you, right? At the end of your close, when are we going to deliver it? That's a simple Assumptive Close. What will your friends say when they see it? Of course, what will your friends say when they see it? You're talking to a business, maybe the business owner's friends. Will 20 cases be enough? Where will we put it? This kind of a thing. How many, will 10 pages be enough? You guys could use it like that. Will 10 pages be enough? Will, this page, will this layout be enough? You can draw this, you can draw it out on paper, you can work it in different ways. Play with this one. It really is a very viable closing technique, and it's one that's used a heck of a lot in other techniques, even some that I'm going to go through here. A quality close. This is a technique that really appeals to people who are quality oriented. You've got a lot of people like this. There are folks out there, and tons of them, that have money and don't really care about the price. They don't care what they're going to spend. They care what they're going to get. Okay, essentially. It's the fundamental truth upon which this close works. With people like this, you have to come at it from the perspective of exclusivity, is the way that I usually will go ahead and use it. I will say, well, I'm only going to sell X amount of people in this area, or I'm only going to sell this for a limited time, or, I know that we're expensive, but we're also the best. You have to come at it from that perspective. And the way you go into the close with it is, and examples here, for a one-off payment, you get nonstop quality. The quality of this shows really who you are, right? Pandering to their ego. This will last forever, giving them a sense of security, permanence, right? Once you try this, you will never want another brand, right? Exclusivity, again, in the sense that they're smart. This product is far more reliable. These are some simple examples of how you'd use it. Basically, in your close, you're closing them upon you're pandering to the quality of the product. There's just sort of two sides to the quality coin. On the one hand, you've got the buyer who wants it because it's exclusive, it's expensive, it's rare, it's delicate, it's precise, it's whatever. Okay? On the other hand, the other side of that closing technique, you got the buyer who wants it because it will last forever, it's stable, it's the best, it's, whatever, precision. They want it for the other reason. So you've got the egocentric, braggadocio mentality. Okay, on the one hand, arrogance and whatnot. And then on the other side, you have the person that wants it for technical reasons and for the sense that they bought the best. And both groups of people are out there. How you decide to use quality or close on quality is up to you. I think the most important way to relate this to our product, relate this closing technique, is things like website personalization. The CDN, is incredible. The fact we have a content delivery network, your site, could be, you could tell a customer your site could be hit by a nuke and it won't go offline because it literally wouldn't. Literally, right? If one of the entire hosting facilities was gone that hosts our sites, all the other ones would just keep right on ticking, right? The site would just load, 0.5 milliseconds slower or something like that, okay? The CDN's a big deal, right? It gives them security for the people who are interested in technical sophistication, for the people who are interested in quality and whatnot in terms of the site itself. You can talk to them about your development staff, that, you're not outsourcing things overseas, that, you can talk about all that kind of stuff, right? Now, you can talk about reliability. There's a lot of things you can bring up, and you all know the features on your website, right? Go through them and think about how you would close somebody on this product from a quality perspective, whether it's technical supremacy, right, or it's the actual underlying quality of your development or our development process. Now, qualified customer close. This really panders towards the big egos around, okay? And what this really, I've used this closing technique personally. I've used the others as well, but I've used this one quite a few times. And that's where you actually have to, you go through your presentation. This one's kind of fun. I've done this for tech products, so I can absolutely relate this to this. You go through your presentation, right? You walk it all the way to the end. And then you reach a point towards the end where, they think you're going to go into the close, and instead of the close, you pull back a little bit, right? You don't just throw the product at them and say, buy, please. You go, wait a minute. I need to know if you're qualified to purchase this. And the way you can do that is you could say, well, I'm only allowed to sell X amount of these in this area. Or, I already have a client in this area and I don't want to oversaturate the market. Or there's lots of different excuses you can come up with for why they are a special client, and that's why they're having the ability, the privilege of buying this product. Now, people have a very strong, and this is a principle of sales too, a very strong sense of a fear of loss. It triggers greed. When somebody fears loss, you can usually trigger greed in them for whatever they're going to lose, all right? That's principally what's going on when you use the qualified customer close. The individual wants to buy this product. You tell them, no, you can't, for just a minute, right? You just pull it back a little and make them go through a brief qualification, rundown. Right? How many years you've been in business, whatever it is. Make it up yourself. The point is, you get them to go through that qualification rundown, and it triggers loss. They don't think they don't know if they can buy it suddenly, and they go from being bored at your presentation maybe to turning around and go, what do you mean I can't buy it? I can buy anything I want. It really will trigger certain people. You have to know what kind of fish you got on the line, right? Remember, the fish only sees the bait, not the hook. So they're looking at it from the perspective of what you just went over. They're not looking at it like they're a prospect. That's another principle. We can go into that another time. This is a, something that, it works really well with like very big egoed, very self-confident type of people. I've seen it work the best. And it works because and this goes into it right here on screen, how it works. It says, when we are told we can't have something, our sense of control is offended, so we are motivated to take control. Now, for a lot of people, if you tell them you don't need to buy this, I'm not going to let you buy my calculator, they'll just tell you to keep your calculator and there's the door. So some people, this will not work at all. But the type of people generally that are really big egoed, controlling, domineering, loud, boisterous, glib, superficial, those sorts of people, right, it will work with. All these techniques will work with certain people at certain times and other people at other times, and some people none of the time, all right? So as I'm going through these, keep that in mind. There is no supreme close. The distraction close. This is probably, I actually hesitated whether I should put this in here or not because it's kind of unethical in my view, a little bit. But It's a closing technique, nonetheless, that is very unique unto itself on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's one that it's worked. It works a lot of the time. And it usually works when the person is sort of on the fence. It doesn't work when someone really doesn't want what you've got. I've used this technique like in situations where I was out at a restaurant meeting a business owner, and I'm trying, I think it's in here. But when you're out at a restaurant, you're meeting a business owner, you're going over a product or a service with them, and you're going through, everything, and they're just delaying you. They want it, but they don't want it, but they want it, but they don't want it, and things are dragging on. There are people like this, situations like this. I'm sure that most of you are actively going out and selling or encountering situations like this where you sit down with your prospect and a 2-hour meeting becomes a 3-hour meeting. Well, in those situations where they're kind of on the fence, they're wishy-washy, but they kind of want it, you can use a distraction close. That means you wait until they get a phone call, plate of dishes crashes in the kitchen, there's a loud noise, there's anything that's distracting, right? That's a big event. And you use it kind of as an icebreaker to push the close through, okay? Kind of like a big ripple in time, right? Because it distracts them. Not consciously, not, their eyes aren't not looking at you, but their mind is elsewhere. Their mind's divided. When you have somebody in that state, you throw a contract in front of them and tell them, hey, here's the contract. You can either push this through by saying, hey, you can create urgency by saying, I have to go. Here's the contract. Let's get this filled out. And that's like a forced assumptive close, right? Where you put a contract down there, you've got your pen, you have it filled out, and you throw the pen in their hand and you say, hey, I have to go. You need to sign this because it's 11 o'clock and I've got to get out of here. If you run into those situations, sometimes they'll sign it. They'll just sign it because they're on the fence. They're a little distracted. They kind of want it. It's not that big a deal whether they buy or not. So they'll go with you, right? There's situations where they'll just buy. Another way that this can work in terms of distraction is when you have a situation where, the buyer wants the product, but you have a second person at the table. This happens. I've seen this happen many times in sales. Nothing will get you upset more than this. Believe me, it'll rankle you. Okay. That's situations where you have somebody there who is trying the whole time to either shoot down your sales presentation or derail it. All right. I think we've all been there. At least all of us who have sales backgrounds have been out there and we've gone through that. We've got that second, third party there that's causing a problem. A distraction close at that moment can work because the distraction can be for that person to focus elsewhere and you can close with your prospect, or it could be for both of them and close with your prospect, okay, where you use the assumptive method. So this is a close, I think, that is almost always used. In a way, it's a form of the assumptive close, but it's unique in and of itself, as I said at the beginning, and it's something that you can use to your advantage. You can absolutely go out there and close with it. Alternative close. This one. This is basically a variation of the assumptive close where, and it's a variation that's just so common and it's so easy to use that I had to include it. I remember when I included this many years ago and I made this specific slide. Basically, you'll have a lot of situations where you're talking to a client, right? They can't make up their mind if they want a 7-page site, a 10-page site, if they want package A or package B, if they want product A or product B, whatever it is, right? You can go through and you can offer them two choices. You can give them two different alternates, right? And you got to keep it reasonably small, not 10. But what you're doing is you're basically taking everything from the presentation and distilling it down to 2 contracts or 3 contracts. Okay, you're distilling it down to just a few options and saying, would you like A, B, or C? Right? And it's an assumptive close because you're asking them, hey, would you like A, B, or C? Which one would you like? And when you do it that way, when you distill things down and you bring it down to would you like A, B, or C, you're far more likely to close that person. Now, you should not have tons and tons of different options here. You have to have just a few, but this can work really well in your favor. Now it's a variation, it says it here, of the assumptive close, and it uses the assumptive principle, but it's unique enough and it's commonly used enough that, like, even before I go into a presentation, I know that I have my quote for this, but before I get a quote like from Rocket Driver, like you guys are getting a quote from Rocket Driver, when you get to the point where you've gone through, your first engagement, like say that you wind up in a multi-meeting situation where you have to meet with this person a whole bunch of times. It's not, the sale isn't going normally, right? You've met with them once, you developed what you need to pitch them, right? You have that, you're trying to close them out, and it ends up going for an extra meeting. All right, so instead of like a 3-step process, it's now a 4-step process. If you have that next meeting, you can come in with an alternative that's either slightly cheaper, slightly smaller, or just plain different. Okay, maybe even slightly bigger. But the point is, the alternative is used as a barge to sort of push out of the way the doubt they had. The 1, 2, 3 close. This is a really, really, this is kind of an odd thing, and it's another sales principle, the idea of triples, okay, in sales. All right. You will have a lot of situations where you're going to have to boil down all the benefits. Like if you were to take every single benefit from the websites that we have here, right? If you took every single part about our sites. Sorry about that, guys. I had to take my hat off. It's getting a little hot here in the studio. Somebody messed with our AC maybe. Anyway, if you have a situation where you have to boil down all this technical minutia into a handful of principles, or a handful of benefits, a handful of features, sometimes it's a good thing and it can help you close, okay? And it's a principle that I've used a lot in sales. I mean, you do it naturally, right? It's almost not a closing technique, but it's a principle where you're telling them, you just keep hitting them with 3s, right? This is cheaper, faster, better. This is stronger. This is safer, more secure, more reliable. This is better designed, better maintained, easier to use. This is, 1, 2, 3. This is more cost effective, longer lasting, and unrestricted. You could just keep drawing these things up endlessly. You can do it in your own mind. And it's a way of knocking down arguments and barriers psychologically to the close, to the actual, final sale of the product, right? Or sale of the service to these people. You're going to have a lot of situations where this really works well. And here's some examples. This product is cheaper, faster, and more reliable than the competition. The houses here are better looking, better built, better equipped than those in the other development. If you buy today, we give you insurance, tax, and a full tank of fuel. So you tell them, if you buy this website, you get the hosting, you get the design, you get the, domain maybe, right? But the point is, you throw it all in triples. I mean, I don't have off the top of my head a whole bunch of triples to throw at you that are specific to our services, but you throw it at them in triples, and it really, really works. It's something that, it's a psychological principle. It really works on people where you can get them to, really change their minds and close out much more easily when you're working that way. So now let's go on from here to the ownership close. This is this is a close that you are probably very familiar with. In fact, I bet all of you are, right? Everybody on this call, you guys have all bought a car, I presume, right? Everybody here's bought a car, or at least been to a car dealership and dealt with a car salesperson, right? What those people do is they always, they're taught this, use the ownership close. The way that ownership close works is basically they get you to psychologically take ownership of this product, right? That's what they're doing. And the way that this sort of pans out, I'm just reading the screen as I'm going with you guys. The way that they do this is you get in the car, right? Say that you get in the car and you go for a drive, right? They always get you to take a test drive. And then after the test drive, you go and you sit down, back at the office, and they say, what are your friends going to think about that? Where are you going to park it in your driveway? How's that going to look at your house? Or, wow, your husband, wife, or whoever is going to say that color really matches your eyes. The point is that they utilize basically an assumptive, but combined, like I said at the beginning, the assumptive is forming the basis of almost all of these closes, at least a lot of them. They're getting you to have that fear of that sense of ownership of the product. Once you feel emotionally that you own a product, the truth really kicks in hard that you buy on emotion, you defend with logic, right? You see this all the time. People buy a product because they like the color, really they like how it looks, really they like some, some trivial perhaps, maybe not trivial, but looks or emotional based aspect of a product, but then they defend with a whole bunch of logical arguments about why they're not, doing something foolish, right? Now, I'm not saying they are doing something foolish necessarily, not if they're buying quality products, but it's just a truism of sales that people buy on emotion and defend with logic. And this close really takes advantage of it, because once you feel emotionally that you own something, then it's much easier to accept paying for it. So what you do with like a website, for example, is you talk to them about when are we going to start development? When do we pick a domain name? I would go with the assumptive route with questions like that. I've done this before where I say, what day should we schedule a call to talk about buying you a domain name? Or what time do we schedule a call to get your domain name taken away from the other company or to registered or whatever? Or when would you like to, when development begins, how long before you announce this to your employees? Or do you have key employees you want in on the development process? Basically, and to get them to feel a sense of ownership, I talk all design, okay? Design is the ephemera, all right, meaning the sort of surface patina, the non-tangible, subjective aspect of what we sell, right? So, with a car, it's the grill, it's the look and feel, it's the shiny paint. With us, it's the design, it's the front end, it's the theme. So I get them playing with designs, right? I show them other websites. I talk to them about how it's going to look. I get them opening up about their design ideas. Even if their ideas are completely, just a crock, and I'm never going to go with it because I know it's awful for them, and my job is to consult them into something that isn't going to make them look horrible, even if I know that's the case, I'm still going to go and I'm going to walk through that process with them, and I'm going to show them, hey, this stuff, this is what's going on here. And, that's how it really works. The ownership close is that's how I get them to take ownership. That's how the ownership close works. Now, let's step forward here to the next slide, the yes, yes close. I love this close. This is one of the first closing techniques that I ever learned. And it is a closing technique that is so applicable to what we do. This closing technique basically works like this. If I draw a list, if I have a list of things, this is not the Ben Franklin, which I know many people are familiar with, the Ben Franklin. This is the yes, yes close. You draw up a list, and in that list you have, and I'm not saying you literally draw it up, but you have, your list mentally, and it is, and you have your prospect. Imagine there's a prospect sitting next to me here. And I'd say to them, you've seen my presentation, yes? Yes. And in the presentation, you understand that we have vastly superior security to what you have on your site now. Yes. And you understand that the design is much better. It's mobile friendly, right? Yes. You walk them through this. And what happens is if it works, and it works quite a bit, if you're going through factual points, don't go saying, you saw the flying spaghetti monster, and yes, they're not going to say yes to that. But you walk them through this stuff, and they give you yes, yes, yes. It forms that repetitive pattern. You'll start getting the head nods, right? They start nodding, yes, And then you walk them into, so you're going to buy this, right? You can bring them there, or you can go to an assumptive. I'll switch to an assumptive close. After I get a bunch of yeses, I'll say, so here's the contract. You agreed to all these points. Sign. Now, there's another way that you can go, which is not you agree to all these contracts, sign. You go through yes, 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 yes. And then at the end, you box them into buying with yeses. Because people use this, and I think it can be a little more caustic, a little more prickly to use this way. But you can go into the closing arena, and you'll have, a situation where they say, well, I don't know if I really want to buy this. And you'll say, but so-and-so, you agreed, right? That X, Y, and Z, you agreed to that it's more secure, that it's safer, that you need this, that it'll make you money, that it's a good decision. Yes, 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 yes. You agreed to this. Well, yeah. Okay, so then you must agree axiomatically that you have to do this. And they'll go, yeah, I guess so. So you can use that principle, right? You're staying almost like a jump ahead, and you're walking through the process to get them to buy at the end, to ultimately, at the end of it all, purchase. You follow, guys? You understand where I'm coming from? I think you guys understand. This is an incredibly useful closing technique for selling websites, because we have so many things that you can get them to agree with, because our platform, that website personalization is something, huh? Oh, yeah, that's amazing. And, you would like to use this, right? You wish you had it. Yes. Our platform contains it. Yes. You can go through this and get them to yes, 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 right into the close. I've used this technique for selling things that cost peanuts and things that cost huge amounts of money, and it works just the same for all of them. It really is a great closing technique, especially when it's paired with a assumptive close at the end. Negative consequences close. This is a closing technique, broadly speaking, you never want to use, but you're going to end up in situations where you do use it, okay? It's not my first choice almost under any circumstances. This is like the choice of a medical procedure because a doctor tells you that you're going to die, all right? You need surgery or death, all right? Surgery you wouldn't choose, death you can't deal with, right? Death you don't want, all right? So rock and hard place. This is the rock, all right? You will have situations where the negativity close really not only comes naturally, but it's just right to use it because of being honest with people who are, deluded or misled or just misguided or ignorant. They don't understand what's going on at their business. You have, and I'll use this technique. And of course, like I said, I use it sparingly. And the way that it works is this. It's basically just going into the close, telling them, okay, here's what's going to happen if you don't do this. One, you're going to lose traffic to competitors. You're doing it now. Number two, those competitors are going to take most of your business so that you end up going broke and losing your lease because you can't make rent. And point three is you file for bankruptcy, go out of business, wind up a bum under a bridge somewhere. Now, that's a crazy exaggeration of how you use it, but you get the point. You line up the consequences, and I'll always pair it with triples so that I go into that close with, 3 points, 3 points, 3 points. If you don't get this done, the website you're running now, it lacks the security. It doesn't have, a solid design, and it's not mobile friendly. That's going to lead to three things happening. Those three things are going to be a loss of customers that you have now, a failure to pick up new customers, and very poor, not just rates of sales, but the dollar value per sale. Something like that, right? Go into that with that sort of a lineup, that sort of a perspective, that kind of approach. And it does work because it's true, and it hits nerves, though. You wind up in sales situations when you go with the negativity close where that end client can be, frankly, pissed off, upset, right? Unhappy with you because, you're going into this and you're telling them things that they don't want to hear, but things that they probably should hear. So don't be afraid to use this, but don't reach for it as your first line. For me, it's always, always, always after I've tried closing another way at least once or twice before I'd ever would reach for this. right? Where I would ever just, and by reach for it, I just mean bring up all of the things that will probably happen if a person doesn't buy this product. Discount value customer close. Okay, this is a kind of cheesy but really effective close for certain types of business, certain individuals. Some people really like this and really respond to it very well. Basically, the way a discount value customer close works is you tell a customer that they are special, okay? You come into their business and you give them, this is like the price drop, if you're all familiar with that. Dropping the price, calling up, hey, I have to call the home base to drop the, you call up and you give them a one-time discount because they're so special. That's essentially what this is, where, say you're trying to close out a website that you're getting from us wholesale for $300 and you're trying to close out at $1,750 and you just can't get them to close for $1,750, but you think you could for $1,200. All right. You have to have a reason to drop the price by, $500, right? If you don't have a reason, they're going to look at you like you've lost it. So if you're looking for a reason to drop that price, the best way to drop that price is to go into it and use the discount close, right? Where you say to them, look, I don't ordinarily do this. I am the owner at this company, or else maybe your salesperson calls you and you say that. I'm the owner at the company. And if you agree to act as a reference for us, if I'm willing to, if you agree to act as a reference, always give them certain responsibilities, agreeing to act as a reference, agreeing to, create a video on YouTube, agreeing for something, right? Give them some responsibility. If they agree to it, you're willing to drop the price by X amount of dollars. All right. That's a great way to pull the drop off in an industry where, we're selling a digital service. And it works at so many levels. I could go into the psychology, but basically the reason that it works so well is it gives them the sense that they're special, number one. It triggers fear of loss because they feel that it's a one-time offer. It's not going to be there soon. And it closes people out a lot of the time that are very price conscious, all right? Because they feel like they won. They feel victory. It works with egocentric type of people, right? They have a sense of victory because they got your price down by $500 or whatever, whatever it is. And the discount value customer close, when you apply it, when you actually use it, it works wonderfully well with a wide variety of people, and it's easy to perform for people who are new to sales. Sometimes, like when I've had sales forces, I would mass train the whole sales force to use a close very similar to this. I'd tell them, get in the house, go out there, get in the pitch, get to the end of the pitch. You're gonna hear them be shocked by the price, and then every single one of you, drop it by X amount of dollars, and drop it based upon you calling the home base, which would be my office, and me authorizing it because they're going to be individuals that will, give a vouch for the company, be a product example, etc. Things like that. And so it can be used for sales forces and individuals alike. Now, we're pretty much at the end of the closing part of this presentation. This is actually the last slide, I believe. But I wanted to go over one final thing with you, because it doesn't matter which one of these closes, all of them, one of them, none of them, that you go through, right? What matters here is that you're able to apply them. And so often, so often, when people get into the sales arena, when they start to encounter situations where they have to close people, they don't know how to take multiple bites at the pie, so to speak. Okay, multiple, runs at the target. All right, they go ahead and they go in, they present. They ask if the person wants to buy. The person says, no, let me think about it. And that's the end of the presentation, and they never buy. That's the truth. That's tons and tons, of people. For them, that's, what happens. And we have a principle here to help you, and a principle that's helped me a tremendous amount in my life, get on track when it comes to, closing techniques and taking tons and tons of runs at it. So when I say to people, my average would be 4 or 5 times I want to get told no before I get thrown out of someone's house, right? When I tell people that, they look at me like I'm crazy. Like, how could you, ask someone to buy 5 times? That's so rude. And I'd be like, no, it's not. It's really not rude, because I use the feel, felt, found principle. If I come at the person with negative consequences close, right? As an example, I say to them, if you don't buy this, you're going to, your website's going to get shut down. You're going to lose your customers and your business is going to go broke. If they come back and they say to me, Jake, I don't think so. I don't understand. You're crazy. I don't think any of those things are going to happen. What do I say back? I don't argue with them. I say, look, I understand how you feel. I understand how you feel in this process. Okay? Because you run a business, you have a website, you're just trying to function, right? But let me tell you what other people have found, okay? Because I've spoken with a lot of people that said the same thing to me that you just said. And as their websites were getting shut down, what they found was when I dealt with them that, and then right at that point, I'll go back into the close. And how would I do that? I'd say, what they found was that they needed a product like this. And let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. And I'll flip back to another slide and say, see what I went over here? The part about website personalization. With this, you're going to be able to connect to your customers. You're going to be able to run your business way more efficiently. You're going to be able to save money on marketing. So there's not really more cost. Then I'll go down here and say, you agreed with me in point 1 and point 2 and point 3. So you're mixing it all up. You go through this. It's not if you were to analyze a sale, none of them go through and just use one close and then that's it. They're all a mix mash. These are almost like mental baseball cards you have in your brain, and you pick them up and you combine them, you flip them, you use them like ingredients from cooking in your head. It's bigger than just a simple closing technique. It's something that has a whole lot of dynamics to it. Because I'm going to go to them and say, as an example, I'll give you another one, right? Let's say we go to the yes close. You agree with this? Yes. You agree that this is a great product? Yes. And you want to have it? Yes. And you agree you could afford it? Yes. Okay, well then, here's the contract. Slap it down. They go, I'm not so fast. I don't know about that website personalization part. What do? I understand how you feel, about website personalization. It's a complicated thing. It's got a lot of moving parts to it. A lot of people I've spoken with feel the same way as you. What am I doing when I'm doing that? Number 1, I'm empathizing with them. I understand how you feel. Others I spoke with felt the same. I'm normalizing the whole situation, right? So they're perfectly normal. I'm not insulting them. I'm not fighting them. I'm saying you're like everybody else. You're normal. I'm not saying you're like everyone else. I'm saying you're like other people. This is a common concern I hear from business owners. You can even make them feel good as you do it. You can pander to them and say, I hear this a lot from successful business owners. Throw that in there. What they found, though, is with website personalization, they saw their sales figures go up by 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 times because the website started generating way more leads. Now, let me just show you and walk you through this part again so I can just bear with me, sir, ma'am. You'll understand when I go through this just one more time. And then I'll walk them back through that same section. You cannot over-close people. You can only under-close them. I have never met anyone oversold on a product, okay, or overcommitted to buy something. I've only met people who were, greatly undersold. Anyhow, this is going to wrap up this presentation.